Show, Patrick.
Why, thank you, Clint. Hello, listeners.
Great to have you. People are pretty excited to have you on here once a week.
It's a dynamic duo, man.
Yeah, well, I think it's your sincerity is what attracts me to your verbiage, your rhetoric. I believe that you really and truly acknowledge and mean what you say and say what you mean. So I appreciate that. It's a rare trait in people, and it's probably rare because it's hard to keep friends that way.
And an active bank account.
Yes! You get it! See? Alright, so, okay, Patrick, I gotta start out the show today, and I think that you'll certainly appreciate this. I still get these random emails that someone I'm sure, that's really patriotic and has no idea what the hell is going on around them and thinks that they're the people and all that stuff, has the just absolute, undying devotion to the United States, the flag, and the citizenship, and they think that it's just the end-all, be-all of the civilized world, right? And so you get these emails or you get these little blurbs from people, and I just want to go over this because, and to be clear, folks, I really want to make it clear. There is absolutely nothing wrong with government. Government is a well-oiled machine. The people who run it are not idiots. They are not stupid. They have actually tricked all of you into the situation you're in today, which is a voluntary slavery, literally. I want you to understand, folks, all you people who create these clever messages that we're about to go through, this is a well-oiled machine. This thing has such control over you that guess what? You stop when a red light tells you to. You go to a machine and ask it for money, and it gives it to you. You go to a checkout stand and check your damn self out of the grocery store, out of the grocer. The corporation, the conglomerate that... What does grocer mean? Too gross, to engross, to charge high prices for something that shouldn't be that? Yeah. Used to be illegal, grocer, your friendly neighborhood grocer. You actually go to the store now, and because of technology, you're able to check yourself out. They don't even have to watch you because they know that you're such a good little slave. And yet you call them idiots. Now let's just go over this little email that I got here, and even the person that passed this on to me, highly intelligent person. But just because you're intelligent doesn't mean that you've killed your ego. It doesn't mean that you've realized that you're a slave, that your foundations aren't all jacked up, and so everything you think is a foundational fallacy. So let me just read here. And Patrick, you can chime in. If you can get arrested for hunting or fishing without a license, but not for being in the country illegally, you live in a country run by idiots. Now, why do I take protest to that statement? Well, again, every one of these statements ends with you live in a country run by idiots, when in fact, what it should say is you live in a country run by masterminds. Absolutely the most brilliant crooks and thieves in history that have enslaved you into actually believing that you need a hunting or fishing license, and that you have no idea how to even defend yourself against the presumption, the assumption of law that you do need a hunting or fishing license. So, do you live in a country run by idiots? Or are you one of the idiots in the country full of idiots run by masterminds? What do you think, Patrick?
I don't know if you're old enough to have known this book, Clint, and I'm not being disparaging of you. It's called The Rich and the Super Rich by Ferdinand Lundberg. He published it in 1968, and he had to confront who actually runs the free world, quote unquote. You know, it's like you and I can't say anything anymore without, you know, deep qualifications. But, you know, he focused on North America, and he basically said, you don't need organized crime like a mafia. He already got he called them the 64 ruling families that were the government. He said you don't need Democrats or Republicans. They're a figurehead on a ship. There's 64 families. They run the United States of America, and they are organized crime. They're the most highly organized crime on the planet.
Well, that's all government is organized crime. Because remember, to make something legal, it has to be illegal. It has to be against the law. I mean, it's organized crime, don't you understand? You know, it's like, and you just said something, I can't remember now, but it drives me crazy that people actually think, and you know, I know it's purposeful, Patrick. I know that the persona that is put forward in these, not only in Congress, but in the movies made about Congress, little comments that are made, that they play over and over in the media, it's designed to make you think that they're idiots. I would want, if I was secretly extorting and exacting every single dollar that I put into circulation over and over again, in other words, every dollar I put into circulation, I collect back tenfold through taxation, another 100-fold. There's dollars that are still out there from 1970s, right? I mean, so if I've actually tricked people into using my dollar, and I collect tax on that dollar every time that dollar's spent, each and every day, 10% here, 25% for income tax, this tax, that tax, gas tax, cigarette tax, this tax, this tax. Not to mention, I've tricked you into smoking cigarettes. I mean, you know, think about this, folks. Who is the idiot? These guys are absolutely... And if I was in their position, I would want you to think I'm an idiot, too.
Well, see, I've been listening to your shows. You know, I've been catching up with the archives, and I can't remember if it was you or KW that said, how did George W. Bush go from an articulate speaker, apparently he had speaking engagements,
oh my God, he was the most brilliant orator ever.
That couldn't even string a sentence together. And it was all an act. And you could tell by looking at him. He had the smirk on his face. He knew he was shining people on. And the only advantage that I had was before I abandoned television, I used to watch these news magazines. Like, you know, the 60 Minutes, the what was it, 48 Hours, Dateline, all that kind of stuff, and they featured the travelers, which were a bunch of shyster con men, and they featured then the art of the con. How do people get taken in? Well, if you come at people with a southern accent and you talk really dumb, the receiver thinks, oh, this guy's an idiot. He can't pull a fast one on me. I'm smarter than he is.
Yeah. And it's psychological warfare.
Exactly. But see, I've just told you the secret. So my problem, Clint, is this. You could teach that to a third grader, and if a shyster came into the room, they'd laugh him out of the room because he could teach it to a kid. So you and I, we mostly interface with at least, you know, grown-up human bodies. You know, can we call them adults because they all are adulterated? You know, it's like, damn, I can't say anything without going back to a dictionary. So we deal with very large people. But what is wrong with them not being able then, once given these patterns, to not see them like a child can?
Well, we call politicians bureaucrats. And yet we don't understand that we're also officers of government, we're agents of governments, and we're bureaucrats ourselves. We do things without thinking about it. That's what the definition of a bureaucrat is. See, we don't understand that we are doing the same exact thing as the people we constantly blame. Here's another one, man. If you have to show identification to board an airplane, cash a check, buy liquor, or check out a library book, but not to vote who runs the government, you live in a country run by idiots. Well, okay, let's rephrase that. You actually live in a country run by brilliant masterminds, because they've convinced you to always act in person, in interstate commerce, when you board an airplane, when you cash a check, buy liquor, or check out a library book. It's not you checking it out, it's your person. And that way they have surety over all this stuff. They have insurance. And most importantly, this guy actually thinks that we vote who runs the government. Again, idiot. I mean, an idiot writing about a bunch of masterminds who he thinks are idiots. So, in other words, when you look, and you can go to YouTube, or excuse me, not YouTube, Wikipedia, for God's sake, you can go anywhere, and you can discover that the United States has an indirect election of the president. It will tell you, even on Wikipedia. In fact, I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to pull it up, because it's right in your face. There's a lot of sources for this, but the fact that it's on Wikipedia, which is a very, very, what's the word? Censored thing. What the hell, folks? You don't even know that you don't elect your own president. That when you vote, you are actually voting. If you want to call it voting, it's a strange word. It's an elective franchise. You're actually confirming the Electoral College to vote for your president. It's you don't even get to vote for your president, and yet here's a guy calling them idiots when all the idiots that are citizens have no idea that they don't even elect their own president. They go out, they spend billions in advertising and promotion. They're watching the debates right now by a bunch of candidates that are backed by the Jewish lobby. And they have no idea that you don't even elect your own president. But you'll watch, you'll get emotional about it, you'll be a complete freaking idiot about the election. Every 4 years, you'll put your heart and soul in it, you'll tell others that they should vote, and if they don't, that they're, quote-unquote, idiots, and yet you don't even know you don't elect your president. You're not an elector. You have what a bunch of idiots run by masterminds. What can I say?
I'm looking for the date, 1870. This is what I have to say. Lysander Spooner. Everything you need to know about voting is right there. 1870. And so this is the other thing that really disturbs me. You might want to make this into like a comedy routine, but I get deadly serious about this stuff. 1870 and people still don't get it? What the heck is wrong with humanity? I mean, this should be passed down through the generations. Fathers should sit their little kids on their knees and give them the talk. And I ain't talking about the birds and the bees.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. Let me read you here. Indirect election. Right on Wikipedia. And again, don't trust Wikipedia. Go find out for yourself. You'll find out that China has a direct election. The people actually elect their president in China. Oh, but it's communist. No, they actually elect their president. We don't. Indirect election is a process in which voters in an election do not choose between candidates for an office, but rather elect persons who will then make the choice. It is one of the oldest forms of elections and is still used today for many upper houses and presidents. Some examples of indirectly elected bodies and individuals include the election of the United States President is an indirect election. Voters elect the Electoral College, which then elects the president. The president of Germany is similarly elected by federal convention convened for that purpose. India and several other countries have a president and or other largely ceremonial head of state elected by their parliament. So, okay, guess what else? The council, the assemblies, the parliamentary assemblies of the Council of Europe, NATO, all these different places. I just don't think the election of government in most parliamentary systems. The voters elect the parliamentarians, who then elect the government, including most prominently the Prime Minister. So in England, they don't vote for their Prime Minister. I think the Queen actually has to approve the appointment. I mean, we have a case where we have if anything, Patrick, to me, is an indication that we are a country of idiots who call our politicians idiots because we've been so ridiculously trained to do so that we don't ever put the blame on ourselves for being idiots. It's the presidential election every year. We actually believe that the popular vote is what elects president. We've been trained so well in that regard, even to the point where we will violently harm others who say they don't want to vote, or will insult to the nth degree people who don't vote or vote opposite of us, and the whole time we're not even voting. It's amazing.
You know what I've done? Before we were ever introduced, and E.T., a slap on the back to you, man, for getting me and Clint together. So what I used to do before I knew you is I would always go to the primary source for whatever it was that I wanted to look up. So archives.gov/Federal Register, man, they have a quote on their hyperlink. The Office of the Federal Register coordinates the functions of the Electoral College on behalf of the Archivist of the United States, the states, the Congress, and the American people. So this is a direct tie. They're the scribes. And what do they have to say? If you go to archives.gov, Federal Register, Electoral College, facts, how did the terms elector and electoral college come into usage? This is what they're asking. And then they answer their own question. The term electoral college does not appear in the Constitution. Article 2 of the Constitution and the 12th Amendment refer to electors, but not the Electoral College. In the Federalist Papers, number 68, Alexander Hamilton refers to the process of selecting the executive and refers to, quote, the people of each state who shall choose a number of persons as electors, but he does not use the term Electoral College. The founders appropriated the concept of electors from the Holy Roman Empire from 962 to 1806. An elector was one of a number of princes of the various German states within the Holy Roman Empire who had a right to participate in the election of the German king, who was generally crowned as emperor. And now I tripped across the congruency of emperor means king, means Caesar, means czar.
Seizure.
Thank you. The term college, from the Latin collegium, refers to a body of persons that acts as a unit, as in the College of Cardinals who advise the Pope and vote in papal elections. In the early 1800s, the term electoral college came into general usage as the unofficial designation for a group of citizens selected to cast votes for president and vice president. It was first written into federal law in 1845, and today the term appears in 3 U.S.C. Section 4 in the section heading and in the text as College of Electors. This is a con job that was like, well, what's 962 AD until now? I got a calculator.
Well, yeah, it's again the modern term that you're talking about are the people of each state, the citizens of states. So in other words, it's talking about the bloodline.
Yeah.
It's not talking about us. We can't be president. We can't elect presidents. All citizenships, commercial citizenships have is the right to the franchise of voting. Because we're in a franchise. You said earlier, you said something about being, the leader of the free world. Or being, in the free world. Free means franchise. It doesn't mean you're free to do what you want. There is no free world in the term that the idiots all think it means. Free means you have a franchise. You are a McDonald's around a bunch of other McDonald's that are under the same rules as every other McDonald's franchise out there. Yeah. The mother corporation rules you. It's that's the mentality, is that because they use words like free, which in the Latin, of course, goes back to franchise, because we freed the slaves, which means we enfranchised them into the citizens. We let them walk around in an open-air prison, and we degraded everyone else to that level of slave. That is what it means to be free. Now, you tell that to the average idiot, they're going to look at you like you're crazy, and they're going to say, no, it's the people in government that are the problem. Well, yeah, it's the people in government that are the problem. But they ain't idiots.
Federal Register, man. You can't argue with this stuff. This is the thing about you and me and our data collection. It's unassailable because we went to the source.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little history. When I was in high school, they make you take civics, and you have to pass your course on the American Constitution. And they were talking about democracy when we were, it's a representative republic. So that caused, cognitive dissonance in my teenage mind. And then they talk about one man, one vote, but they would also then portray the Electoral College. And even as a teenager, I was like harshly logical back then. It's like, well, wait a minute. If there's an Electoral College, then why do they keep promoting this lie of one man, one vote? And the instructor of this high school class actually told me, don't worry about it. Just put down the answer that is asked for on the test when you take it.
Yeah.
Clint, at 13 years old, I knew we were in a matrix. I didn't have a word for it. Keanu Reeves probably wasn't even born. But when 13, I guess that's the. Is it a biological, a physiological crossover? I was no longer 12-teen, I was 13, and I knew there was something fundamentally wrong with the world.
Well, let's go back to just top this off. Horace Greeley.
Capitize it.
Horace Greeley lived from 1811 to 1872. He was the founder of the New York Tribune, and he was speaking on post-Civil War citizenship. Now, Lincoln would commonly send letters to Horace Greeley. And one of those letters stated the following. This is an excerpt from a letter dated August 22, 1862, where Lincoln said, "My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union," talking about the Civil War, "and is not either to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do so because I believe it helps to save the Union." Now, you gotta realize all these guys care about is their Union. Lincoln is a prince. Like you said before, Lincoln is one of the bloodline. Lincoln is as all presidents are, direct descendants of the kings of England, okay? All of them related to Washington. So I gotta be clear here again. President Lincoln, from his 1860 inaugural address to everybody, and yet nobody ever quotes this, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interface with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I believe I have no lawful right to do so, and I have no inclination to do so." Lincoln's Secession and Slavery, written in 1858. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the whites and the black races. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. There's a physical difference between the white and the black races, etc., etc., etc. Now, what's important is that you're not quite getting the full understanding of what Lincoln was thinking. Why the Civil War? Because it wasn't to end slavery, obviously. It was to save the Union. And the southern states wanted to get the hell out of the Union because they were being required to pledge their entire structure, their entire possessions, their entire lands to the good faith and credit of the United States, all of their debtors. That is why the South didn't want to be part of the Union. Because it was time to declare bankruptcy, and it was time to repledge all the assets of the quote-unquote United States, the Union, which included all the new states. I wouldn't want to do that either. I would fly a Confederate flag to save myself from becoming a debtor for someone else's problems. Here's what Horace Greeley said, founder of the New York Tribune, speaking on post-Civil War citizenship. Now remember, we had the Reformation amendments to the Constitution, the 13th and the 14th, which created voluntary slavery, first with the 13th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment created the animal, the capacity, the personhood, the citizenship to do just that. Here's what he said. Founder of the New York Tribune. We have stricken the slave shackles from 4 million human beings and brought all laborers to a common level, not so much by the elevation of former slaves as by practically reducing the whole working population, white and black, to a condition of serfdom. While boasting of our noble deeds, we are careful to conceal the ugly fact that by an iniquitous money system we have nationalized a system of oppression which, though more refined, is not less cruel than the old system of chattel slavery. Folks, he's talking about you. He's talking about all us idiots out here who walk around in United States citizenship. We were devolved to the state of being Negroes. Welcome back here in the Corporation Nation. Good old Horace Greeley. Yeah, he, I don't know, Patrick, but it seems to me like we have a bunch of people who seem to believe that they are the smartest people in the world, who speak in a language that was created to dumb them down, and therefore they believe that everybody is an idiot but themselves. And as a class of people, we are known as the massive illiterates, the idiots, the naturals, whatever, there's so many terms, the four-footed, the beasts, the dogs, speaking dog Latin. I mean, it's amazing how many terms, how many derogatory terms they actually have for us. Let's take another one. If the government wants to ban stable, law-abiding citizens from owning gun magazines with more than 10 rounds, but gives 20 F-16 fighter jets to the crazy leaders in Egypt, you live in a country run by idiots. Now, is that a true statement? Well, let's talk about this, folks. First of all, law-abiding citizens, as if you have a choice. Slaves don't really have a choice, but okay, you can call yourself a law-abiding citizen. Second of all, if you have a gun and you are complaining about the laws, why are you a law-abiding citizen? Isn't the purpose of a gun to sort of rise up and go against unlawful laws? Isn't that the purpose of having a gun? So who's the idiot? Now, as far as the government banning certain types of firearms, and, that makes us idiots also, because we allow government to call them firearms, and we register them as legal firearms, and that means that they're then confiscatable and regulatable and everything else because we're turning them into legal instruments instead of keeping them natural and just as arms. So, I mean, we do everything very idiotically, and yet I'm supposed to believe that the people who foisted this plan upon us, who are limiting your guns, are idiots. Now, if I'm in power, and I've done such horrific things to the people, I've stolen their blood right, I've done everything, I've devolved them all to the point of all of them now being Negroes, because Negro doesn't mean black, it means colorless, it means you have no blood, it means you have no color, nothing, no rights, nothing, you're a slave. Now, if I was that kind of person, I'd want to limit guns too. That doesn't make me an idiot. That just means I'm saving my own butt so that I have a strong enough military, a standing army, which the idiots don't seem to realize, especially the ones in the army, that was one of the biggest complaints in the Declaration of Independence, that the king had a standing army. So, is it a country run by idiots? Or are these guys way more smart than you give them credit for? Again, it's just a question.
Can we just call this third grade class? Because I'm getting a kick out of this. You could teach this to a third grader. What they do in armaments is this. They arm both sides. I mean, that's just blatantly clear, because the only rulers of this planet, it doesn't matter if you call it Russia and America or Syria and Israel. It's all run by the same family. Maybe different personas of the same family that are like competitors in a video game, and they might try to like muscle, their relation out of a position of power, and it actually might get rough and it might get lethal because they have a history. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin have been slaughtering each other over real estate for thousands of years. Why would it be any different now? So
and this is why we gave 20 F-16 fighters to the quote-unquote crazy leaders in Egypt who really just have their heads up our politicians' asses.
And the gambit, the game here, is that when you arm both sides, you give the outdated, maybe broken, maybe not so good arms to the side that you want to lose. And you give the good stuff to the side that you want to win, and then you sit back and you watch the game, because I think these creatures are generational. I think they live longer than we do, and they are bored out of their freaking minds. And so this is a game to them.
Well, consider this. I mean, talk about one of the greatest plays they've ever made is nuclear weapons, because, again, as long as the nuclear weapons just sit around and rust, then they have more power than if they're actually used, right? So the threat of the nuclear weapon is so much more important than the actual use. The actual use would be ridiculous. I mean, it's a ridiculous concept. You would be destroying everything that you would seek to gain from any war. It would be pointless. You would not gain proles. You would not gain citizens. You would not gain, prisoners of war. You would not gain land, real estate. You wouldn't gain anything. You'd probably destroy the money. So, I mean, let's talk about Iran. Well, of course they're going to allow Iran to become, to get into the nuclear age, because that is the most outdated, ridiculous threat in the world. Are you not familiar with the guns, the laser guns and the energy weapons that surround Israel? There's no way a bomb could even get into Israel. We supplied the system that will shoot down anything. The notion of nuclear war is so outdated, so ridiculous in its connotations that people actually, the idiots who still believe it's a viable threat, I mean, brilliant, these guys. And we're supposedly the smart ones, and we suffer idiots ruling us who threaten us with 70-year-old technology. Meanwhile, they're building up robot frickin' armies, and we don't care. And we're not using our arms, our guns, to do anything about it. We are the idiots!
So we have to default to the Pynchon quote every time. Every time. It will never fail us. If you ask the wrong question, it don't matter what the answer is. So while people are jumping up and down, all, righteous indignation about, small numbers of ammunition in a magazine, they got freaking active denial systems with microwaves. So do you have a way of protecting yourself from... And the cops have this. It's not even like military. It's military-grade weaponry. But it's like your police have active denial systems. So it doesn't matter if you've got a magazine that can shoot 100 bullets. If you're jumping up and down because you're being cooked on the inside, it don't matter how many bullets you got, man. This is
true,
fun.
man. The world has been sort of there's like this sort of invisible Faraday, not even a Faraday cage, but it's sort of like we've been turned into a microwave. Like they can just nuke us through microwaves at any time, can't they?
Well, see, here's the thing. I tried to get this in people's consciousness, and I think it was 78. Don't ever rely on me for a number, okay? But I think it was 1978. The UN banned weather modification for use as warfare. Well, the only reason you could or would do that is if it was possible in 1978. And this came from an article that was written in Scientific American. They said back in the day they had now that's a microwave amplification of stimulated emission radiation. A laser is light. One's microwave, one's light. So they had orbital masers, and all you had to do was heat up the ocean, which that's what microwave freaking does, man. It's tuned to the frequency of water, and it heats up your food, supposedly. Well, you could put 666 as a carrier wave for that modulation. But all you have to do is heat up the ocean, and you can create weather. And don't we see, like, the most insane weather all around the planet? Man, they've been doing this since the 70s.
I'll never forget, man. One day, it was when I was in L.A., and I didn't see chemtrails. I didn't see contrails until I was in L.A., which, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, because, and my friend, I didn't know what cell phone towers were either. I didn't know that the little things that were on the side of buildings and stuff were where cell phone waves were coming from, and nobody else did either. And people still today don't quite understand that. They think it's coming from space or a top. And so we're watching a movie after he'd pointed out the chemtrails, and the movie was "The Russians Are Coming, the Russians Are Coming." And I'm watching it, and back in the background there's this plane, and it's got this massive puff of chemtrail behind it that I was shocked to see. So, when was that movie made? In the 60s, 70s? I can't remember. But I'm like, my God, they've been doing this forever. And then, of course, that led me to look and see that, in the 1940s and 50s, they were putting adverts in newspapers telling people they were going to be spraying the skies.
Wow.
Geoengineering. So,
wow.
Crazy. It's just amazing. I don't know... If in the largest city you can buy 2 16-ounce sodas but not a 24-ounce soda because 24 ounces of a sugary drink might make you fat, you live in a country run by idiots. Now, I might agree with that if it weren't for just the schema, the notion of doing appearingly stupid things is good for PR. It again, making people think that you're doing something stupid when really you're subverting and causing them to be in a state of constant dissonance, constant just confusion. That's not idiotic. That's brilliant. And they do that all the time. When you read the newspapers, when you read anything and you have two conflicting stories about global warming, one says we're going into an ice age, one says we're going to be barbecue. That's purposeful. That's not idiotic. That's not stupid. That's not a mistake. You see, it's not idiots. It's purposeful. It's brilliant. It's a well-oiled machine, and you're going to keep seeing that in every mainstream and big alternative outlet. You're going to continue to see that type of ridiculousness because it makes you believe that you are superior to the system that rules you. And as long as you believe that, and as long as you really think you're free, not franchise, not a denizen, then you're going to put up with the idiocracy. You're going to actually become part, more so, of the idiocracy because you don't think that you don't see anything to defeat. You can't defeat idiocracy. You can't defeat idiots. That's like going and killing children. You can't do that.
Oh, man, you were working us into the pros. Okay, you tell me, Clint, because, we're doing everything unrehearsed, and, this is the first time we've started this regular Monday thing. Can I do some shameless self-promotion?
I insist.
Okay. So what I did is I lived with the protocols of Zion for 1 month, and I did a narration. And in the narration, see, I don't mind embarrassing myself if it's a learning experience for everybody. In the narration, I was like crying. I was doing a wah baby of, they keep talking about their secrets, but they never really come out and say it. And I put that in my narration, and I finally got to protocol number 5, line 10, and you're going to love this. This is amazing, because I don't mind looking like an idiot. This is protocol 5, line 10. In order to put public opinion into our hands, we must bring it into a state of bewilderment by giving expression from all sides to so many contradictory opinions and for such length of time as will suffice to make the goyim lose their heads in a labyrinth and come to see that the best thing is to have no opinion of any kind in political matters, which is not given to the public to understand, because they are understood only by him who guides the public. This is the first secret. So in the narration, I had to beg off and go, oh, wait a minute. They not only tell us what their secret is, they even label it. Their first secret is what Norman Livergood, and his website is HermesPress.com. It's called paradox. If you sow paradox, and I absolutely adore John Hagee sermons, he'll go, God is love, and he loves screaming, and he's going to burn you rotten sinners to a cinder. That's giving two absolute diametrically opposed messages all at the same time. The receiver doesn't know what to think. That's the first secret. Paradox, cognitive dissonance. That's why they do it.
Yeah, well, it's let me read one of my favorite quotes. Because, we talk about this all the time. We talk about how we've been tricked by these brilliant people. Mm-hmm. And like you say, Patrick, you sort of coined the phrase, as far as I know anyway, because I got it from you, that there's nothing new under the sun gods. So, this is by Manly P. Hall in his Ceremonial Sorcery and Magic. It's one of my favorite quotes because it really says a lot. Because we're talking about the corruption of blood. How do you control people? You take away their blood. And that's figuratively, of course, as everything is in the legal and scriptural realm. You have to take away their power, their virility, by taking away the blood, and that's why we call attainder and all these different personhood and citizenship is a corruption of blood. So you have no inheritable blood. You have no inheritable rights. All your rights are garnered from the master that you volunteer to serve. So, in the Arcanum of Magic, it is declared that he who controls the soul, who controls the blood of another. So he controls the soul, who controls the blood of another. And this is a very true statement. And we're talking about magic. What is magic but words? Through the demonism of the Middle Ages, though the demonism of the Middle Ages seems to have disappeared, there is abundant evidence that in many forms of modern thought, especially the so-called prosperity philosophy and the willpower-building metaphysics and systems of high-pressure salesmanship, the black magic has merely passed through a metamorphosis, and although its name be changed, its nature remains the same. Although its name be changed, its nature remains the same. That is the case with just about everything we do today. We'll be back, folks.
There's a solution. It slowly go by.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back. Here in the Corporation Nation, we're talking about the magic, the black arts of the ruling class and how they've actually made people think that they're idiots, which is an amazing, probably the most amazing feat. It's kind of like when they say the devil's greatest trick was to make the people think he didn't exist. It's kind of like that. It's the greatest feat of those who control and rule us in utter tyranny without us knowing it. That's their greatest feat, is that we actually think they're dumb. They actually convinced us that we're smart. Maybe that's the greatest feat. I don't know. It's tough to say what the greater one is. Ugh. Just amazing. If an 80-year-old woman can be strip-searched by the TSA, but a woman in a hijab is only subject to having her neck and head searched, you live in a country run by idiots. If your government believes that the best way to eradicate trillions of dollars of debt is to spend trillions more, you live in a country run by idiots. Now, again, folks, you got to understand that debt is good. I mean, you got the millionaires, the billionaires, possibly the trillionaires out there right now, and you know what they're all investing in? Every single one of them. Your Warren Buffett, he's the head of a corporation, so the corporation naturally is investing in things that they want people to invest in so that their stock goes up. But when you're talking about personal investments, these guys are buying debt. Debt is the most valuable asset you can purchase because once you, let's say, get a $500 million loan, you turn that loan into land, and you start making payments, then all of a sudden the whole thing crashes. Guess what? You got that land for pennies on the dollar. Debt is the most important thing that government covets. This is why every corporation, municipal corporation, county, city, school districts, why they're all seemingly in debt. They don't have to be in debt. They could pay off all their bills tomorrow if they just cashed in all their investments. But the fact is that debt is profitable. It's the most profitable thing in the world, which is why, my idiot friends, they call us debtors and themselves creditors. Get it? We are the money. We are the debt. We are the thing that the debt is established on. They can do anything they want because they can create money out of people and their property, which is actually their property. Mm-hmm. Now, who's the idiot? Yeah. Who's the idiot?
Well, let me confess to inability to understand. The kind of scam that you just described of them buying into debt, is that available to us simple pros, or is that just a high roller kind of gambit?
Well, I mean, you could certainly invest in debt. The trick is being able to cash
right.
It's weird. You have to cash in the debt. Like I said, I mean, if you're willing to participate in this system, then great, go do it. Go get an unsecured credit card. You don't have any requirement to pay it back. They're going to write it off and get their money. It doesn't exist in the first place. It's just a journal entry. You can go get as many credit cards as your FICO score, your FIG will let you get. You can do all that. You can rob if you want and never pay it back. If you want to participate in the system, you can do that, absolutely. We'll be back, folks. Don't go away! are in the Corporation Nation. We're talking to Patrick Jordan today. You can buy all of Patrick's books at vaccinefraud.com. And also, Patrick has a massive tome of research upon that website. You can go through all kinds of good stuff from years upon years of research. And again, that's vaccinefraud.com, which is such a simple-minded title and yet so efficient.
Well, what I did is I had to choose something that conveyed my view of what they were doing to us, because like you said, these things are lethal predators that actually have skills that were honed over thousands of years of hunting the human being. And in their system, see, I don't claim their system, in their judicial system, fraud and murder have no statute of limitations. And fraud often leads to murder or death. So it's like, yeah, I picked that website name very carefully.
Yeah, and see, this is one of the big things that I've discovered that nobody will accept, even though it's written right in their own, definitions, court cases, etc., and principles of law too, is that government is the foundation of fraud. It's not that government is committing fraud, it's that government lives, it exists as a fraud. And when something is born or birthed into fraud, it cannot, therefore, commit fraud. It's not like the king is going to come and say, "Oh, King, you were bad," look at in the mirror and punish himself, right? I mean, if you're born of fraud and everything you do is fraudulent, everything you induce from people into personhood and citizenship and the commercial aspect of law, if everything you do is fraudulent, then there is no fraud. And that's so important for people to understand, that if government is a conspiracy, it can commit no conspiracy. It is already in conspiracy. Conspiracy being another word for confederation. You have to understand that. It makes the rules of its own creation. The Creator controls. God controls its own creation. So when men act as gods, they control their creation. And if you're participating in the fraud by becoming a fraudulent or an artificial person, etc., fiction, then you can't call it fraud until you back out of it and you actually say, okay, you committed fraud, you tricked me into the fraud, I'm now out of the fraud, now I'm going to sue you for fraud. There's no fraud.
You're making me dance in my databases to get the to get these quotes.